Welcome back everyone. We are moving on to piecing our leaves and stem. And we're going to finish up our complete flowers. We're going to start with pieces K and I. And we're going to make our HSTs. We're going to lay the color 1 piece on top of the color 2 piece, making sure to get them straight and even. Then we're going to take our ruler and a hair marker or fabric marker, whichever you prefer. We're going to mark a diagonal line down the center, corner to corner. And then we're going to pin along that line. And this is going to make 2 HSTs. We're going to take these over to the sewing machine. And we're going to sew down either side of that line, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So lining up your presser foot with that center line. I'm going to keep your presser foot to the right of it. Then I rotate mine, and you're going to go down the other side, lining up the edge of your presser foot with your hair marker line or fabric marker line. You're going to have 2 lines of stitching down this block with your line in the center. Now we're going to take it back to the cutting mat, and we are going to use our ruler or straight edge, line it back up with that center mark, and using your rotary cutter you're going to cut a line down the center. And now, if my blade will cut, now you'll have 2 HSTs. We're going to take those over and press them. You're going to press your seams open on these. And you can use your clapper again to get a nice crisp seam. And now we're going to trim them. And this is an important step. Do not skip this step, because if you do not trim your HSTs, nothing will line up. So what I like to do is take that diagonal line. I'm using the center square of my cutting mat, and I line up those corners. So you're going to cut this block down for the crib size. You'll be trimming it down to 7.5 by 7.5. That's for the wall hanging and crib. So you're going to, I just use those, that center seam, those corners. I line one up at 0, one up at 7.5. And same with the second block. Take that diagonal line. I was just finding the corner that looked a little bit better. Line that point up at 7.5, or whatever size you're using. Make sure to reference the pattern. Line the other corner up at 0. And again, if you have a better way of doing this, if you have a square ruler that you can use, by all means use that. And you can also use the lines on your ruler to make sure you're getting keeping that diagonal at the right angle. And just trim off those points. Okay, we have our finished HSTs. I'm going to take one HST and piece J. Notice that we have the color 2 facing upwards. You want to make sure you are forming the leaves here. You'll sew piece J with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then you're going to take another HST, color 2 facing upwards to form that leaf. Or leaves, I suppose. And this is where seam allowance is very important. Once you sew this and then unfold it, you want to make sure those points are matching up at the bottom. If your seam allowance is off, then your points are going to be off. Now we're going to press it, and I again press the seams open on this one. Okay, and just press it again. Get all these little creases out. Okay, and you will piece 3 of these, and now we are going to sew them all together. Making sure to face them in the right direction and matching up your seams. I pin at the seams again so that my points are matching up. That's the easiest way to get your points to match up, is to make sure you pin through the seams. And if you need to pen in additional places, of course, do that, but I'm choosing not to. It's just back stitching at the top and bottom again. Okay, so you have 4 leaves now, or 2 leaves, however you want to look at it. Now we're going to add the 3rd strip, pinning at the seams so that your points line up again. And as you sew these together, you'll want to make sure to pay attention to those points again, just like we did in the triangles previously. Just make sure your line of stitching is going right through that intersection where your seams meet up to form a clean point. There you go. Now we have a stem. You can take that over and press your seams open again. Now we're going to take piece C. This piece will go between the flower and the stem. Excuse my hair in the way. So piece C will go between the flower and the stem. Piece D, if you are making a crib, throw, or queen size, will go at the bottom of the stem. We are doing a wall hanging, so we do not have a piece D for this tutorial. Okay, all set. Now we can add our flower to the top. And again, I'm laying the flower on top so that I can line up those points. And if you need to pin here, by all means, pin or use fabric clips. But I'm a rebel and I'm not going to, so. Making sure to lay your seams flat as you sew across them. Okay, we have a full finished flower. So now we press our seams open. We are going to add pieces B. This is the sashing. It's going to go on the right and left sides of the flower stem. Again, I'm doing the wall hanging here. You would have a piece D that went along the bottom for the quilt sizes, and then you would sew your A and B pieces on. After you sew all of your flowers together. So you would finish a flower, finish your 3 flowers, sew those all together, and then your A and B pieces on the border. Again, be careful of the points. Making sure your seam allowance is laying flat. I'm just checking all of the points to make sure that I didn't sew too far over. And your other B piece. Now you will press your seams open, and the final step is to sew your A pieces to the top and bottom. And as you run the pattern, I did allow for a little bit extra fabric on your A and B pieces. So once you sew the B pieces on, you will need to trim and press first and then trim off the excess. And I did the same with the A pieces. This just allows for any discrepancies in the seam allowance. If something wasn't quite a 1/4 inch or something like that, then you're going to be short. If you try and cut those border pieces exactly at the width and length that you need them, just the length, not the width. So I allow for extra. Doesn't mean you'll need it, but it's good to have it just in case you do. And you'll just trim that off and you square everything up. Okay, we are all done with our wall hanging. And again, you'll press your seams open, trim up the ends, and you're all finished. You can join me in the next video, and I will go over how I based my quilts and a little bit about how I quilt them and your quilting options, and then finishing up the binding. Thanks, guys.